Hi, and welcome to my channel where we talk about all things of the spiritual journey, spiritual awakening, to find yourself back to living in your authentic truth. Today, we will be talking about spiritual awakenings. Today, we're going to be talking about spiritual awakenings. What is a spiritual awakening? What happens during a spiritual awakening? And what triggers a spiritual awakening? So, let's just get straight into it and talk about what is a spiritual awakening. So, there's so many different types of spiritual awakenings, but usually a spiritual awakening is something that literally profoundly shifts into your consciousness, where you are now thinking about what is important to you. You're looking for a deeper meaning of life. You're finding connection to yourself, trying to understand yourself on a deeper level, and trying to really connect everything around you in your life to make sense of it all. During a spiritual awakening, a lot of things happens. So one of the things that happens is you sense a great shift in your emotions. All of a sudden you start to feel more tapped in and more tuned in with how you feel. You start to feel the feelings that you might have once repressed. Sudden feelings like fear, um, maybe even heartbreak that you might have never felt, and you start to realize that you might have wounds around your heart. You start to feel an inner calling to heal your feelings that might have been unacknowledged before. You start to tap into those feelings and those energies because once you have higher consciousness, your vibration, your frequency starts to rise so you can tune into the energies of others. So you become more empathetic during these times. When you're experiencing a spiritual awakening, you awaken the feelings within yourself. Another thing that happens during a spiritual awakening that you start to feel is a sense of wanting to know more. So you'll get into deep questioning of like, what does life mean? What is true? What is my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing here in this lifetime? So if you start feeling like you're getting those type of questions, you're asking yourself, what am I supposed to be doing? You might start to feel a disconnect with your career. You might start to feel a disconnect with your friends, your relationships. Literally, everything starts to become questionable because you start to realize like that you might not have really been connected to the things that you've been doing this entire time. So when you start to feel that way, it's probably you going through an awakening at this time where you're feeling like you want answers as to the things that you've been doing this entire time. Do I really like to do this, or have I just been doing this because I've been taught to do this? Those are the type of questions that come up during a spiritual awakening. During the spiritual awakening, you might start to feel an intense feeling of wanting to become and experience your authentic self. It's like a craving, a yearning of, or even a calling, like from your soul, to connect you to the things that make you feel authentically you. So you'll start to eliminate the things out of your life that do not resonate with who your spirit authentically is. And so this might mean you might disconnect with certain people. You might start to lose friendships. You might break up during a spiritual awakening with people because you're trying to find the parts of you that make sense to your soul and your purpose. A lot of the times when you're going through a spiritual awakening, you'll start to awaken your soul's purpose, your meaning of being here in this lifetime. And so that is one of like the most grandest things that happens during a spiritual awakening is you're being called back to your soul and being called back to what your soul was meant to be doing in this lifetime. So when you feel these awakenings, there might be a little bit of uncomfortability and uncertainty in it all because you are dismantling everything you probably once knew to be you. And you're really uncovering the parts of you that have been hidden from all the things like limiting beliefs, trauma experiences, and just life that happens that kind of blinds you to seeing who you are. And we have these spiritual awakenings to kind of wake that up in us again, to find us back onto the right path, to aligning our soul with our mission or purpose. So, what are the things that triggers a spiritual awakening? Well, There's so many things that can trigger a spiritual awakening. One of the most common ones that triggers an awakening is a near death experience. If you have happened to be in a ocean and you almost drowned, or you did drown and you experienced that time where you were like in the in between, that was probably a spiritual awakening that has allowed you to see that there's absolutely more to life than what you are experiencing, and it brings you back into wanting to live more of life. So you'll go through something like that. You can possibly get really sick and have an illness, something like cancer, that can cause you to have an awakening moment of realizing that you have so much more to offer. This could be your body and your spirit trying to purge something out of you so you can awaken to live your purpose. um, Something like a heartbreak, any type of traumatic event that caused a lot of trauma and pain to you, can cause you to awaken into diving into loving yourself deeper, or wanting to understand yourself more, being closer to yourself. These type of situations, it kind of brings you more into yourself and also into having faith. When you're going through these tough times in life, it could bring you back to having faith and wanting to know if there's more that you can get out of life, because you might be at a low point in your life. You can also receive an awakening through a beautiful, loving relationship that you've been encountering. For example, if you finally found somebody that loves you properly and has been loving you so healthy in a way that you've never experienced before, this can help you dive into a realization of like, wow, life is actually super beautiful and meaningful. And I want to dive more into that. And that's going to help you dive more into yourself. And so you can have awakenings that doesn't have to necessarily be so traumatic and sadness, but usually those are the ones that catch your attention and bring you into this deep experience of awakening within yourself to find yourself closer to your highest self and your soul's mission in life. So there's so many things that can cause a spiritual awakening. The list can go on. You can have things like paranormal activities, experiences like the pandemic, and anything that's traumatic that's happening in life or in the world that can cause you to wake up and question things like, why is this happening? Why is there so much evil happening in the world? You start to question things, and you go down a deep rabbit hole, and you realize that everything is a reflection of who we are. That's another story for another day. But spiritual awakenings are not the nicest things that can possibly happen to us. Sometimes they're very difficult. Sometimes they're very, very challenging to overcome. And there's many levels to the spiritual awakening. But it always, always, always brings a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful ending where you find yourself closer to yourself. You find yourself living in your truth. You find yourself being happy about the simplest things in life and realizing that all the things that you thought were important or mattered or needed for you to be successful were just things that might have been necessarily taught to you. And you start to disconnect with those things that don't really resonate with who you truly are and who your soul wants to be. And so this is the beauty of spiritual awakening. So many things has come to me from my spiritual awakenings. All of my gifts and abilities has come to me through my awakenings that I've had. Usually when you have a spiritual awakening, you can tap into yourself a lot more and tap into your abilities. You'll get psychic abilities. You start to see synchronicities happening, which is showing you that you are aligned with life and the universe and everything around you, which means you're in a perfect flow and frequency of alignment. You are also capable of starting your own spiritual awakening by starting a spiritual journey. You can do things like breath work, meditation, yoga, anything that's helping you tap into yourself on a healthy journey and on a deeper level can encourage you to align with life and the universe and everything around you, which means you're in a perfect flow and frequency of alignment with your highest person, with your highest self. So it's just so beautiful. It really, really is. I love everything about a spiritual awakening. I wouldn't change it for the world. They are very, very intense. Some are more intense than others. The more that you start to have, the more you start to trust in the process. But some of them are very scary because you are releasing the limiting beliefs, the limiting fears, all the trauma that has held you back that you might have not noticed within yourself, to embrace your own inner light. And so I definitely encourage anyone, because you can also start your own spiritual journey and a deeper level of consciousness. When you are in tune with yourself, you are in tune to a different level of consciousness, which can lead you to a spiritual awakening. So I hope that this gave you some informative information about spiritual awakenings and how they work. And if you are having signs of spiritual awakenings, please let me know. Share your experiences with me so we can have a community, because we are going to be experiencing a lot of spiritual awakenings during this time. I am quoting myself, like, I believe a lot of people are going to be experiencing spiritual awakenings with the climate of the world of today. So let me know if you are experiencing a spiritual awakening. Let me know if you have experienced a spiritual awakening and how it went for you, so you can let other people know and let them not feel alone in their journey. Um, I think it's amazing to talk about these things. I think it's beautiful to be sharing this, and I would love to hear other people's stories about their own journey. If you have any questions about the spiritual awakening journey, let me know. If you have any questions about going on your own spiritual journey, and if you need any tips or tricks and tools that will help you get into that, let me know. Write it down in the comments. And thank you for tuning in and watching. I love you so much, and see you in the next video. Mwah.